very happy to have the filmmaker of Illyricum with us this time, and he's so kind to talk about why he decided to make this film and some background information. So hello Simon, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be in this way with you all. Thank you for accepting a film on your festival, and big hello to everybody watching.
We are very happy that we have your film on board. It's very interesting what you did, and maybe you would like to start to tell us a little bit about why you chose this topic for your film, and were you always interested in historical topics, or is it a first one?
I'm coming from a visual art background, from short animation and experimental cinematography. Okay, and Illyricum is my first feature, which is of course a historical feature, as you know. But in my previous film, I also I made films which are in some way connected to history topics, like Leviathan, Thomas Hobbes, stuff like that, you know. So history was always my one of the favorite subjects, and considering Illyricum, I was strongly interested in this part of ancient Balkan history, and it was really interesting for me to realize that no film about Illyrian exists at all, you know, feature or some kind of documentary series, etc., etc. And my first question was, why is that so? So I started to work on the subject. Of course, it was huge for me as visual artist, you know. So then I connected myself with experts from the period, archaeologists, linguists, etc., etc. And then with their help, I started to make a concept and a script for this film. Because one thing is that, you know, the books, history books I was exposed to when I was a kid in school, you know, a lot of things are a little bit, you know, like put on a question, especially with, you know, archaeogenetics and new finds and new discoveries in the field. So it was quite interesting to ask myself about, you know, not just my personal identity, cultural identity, etc., but to ask some questions about the global entity of the Balkan, you know, which is quite complicated, etc., etc. And it was really interesting for me to be involved in a process of making those Illyrian culture alive in cinematography, you know. Because it was very, very small amount of data we could base things on, so we have to do a lot of research in ethnology, ethnography, etc., to be able to put this film together, you know. Because in animation, you know, you can create almost anything today with 3D and artificial intelligence, blah blah blah. You can do whatever your imagination wants, yeah. But for me, I made a different approach, because those work with experts was very important, and we really tried to establish all audiovisual settings considering their advices, you know. So we tried to do very small amount of invention. Of course, we had to in some cases, but considering all audiovisual elements, we really tried to be as accurate as possible at this moment. So it was a very interesting process for me. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the location scouting. Was it was the shooting in Croatia? Everything?
Okay. Well. I will put a little bit of a context if I have time, you know. Croatia is, you know, very small cinematography country, you know. We don't have big budgets for movies, etc., etc. So we had to do co-production situation with Slovenia, with Italy and Kosovo, you know, so it was quite to be able to even go to shooting of this film. It took a really long time, you know, considering research, considering budgets, money, etc. And this Illyricum is really film which didn't have huge budget, of course, you know. But and considering that, we have to just make a modification, you know, because first plan and first concept was to shoot in Croatia on original locations, you know, which are mountain range, Velebit, etc., etc. But you know, as Croatia becoming touristically exposed country, the prices just went so high that we couldn't make, you know, 150 people, complete crew and everything else in this area. So we can combine. Well, some of the parts of the film were shot at Velebit, when you see those sea islands, etc., etc. Another 80% of film we filmed in Bosnia. Which, but interesting thing that this part of Bosnia are very similar to Velebit. You know, it's hard to tell, even for me, who knows, I went to Velebit a lot of times. It's really impossible to make a difference, you know, like, aha, this is not Velebit. So we really put a lot of effort of finding appropriate location, because from my point of view, the landscape and scenery is also actor of a movie. So it was important for us, yeah.
Yeah. And did you choose actors who were also related to history in regard of their aspect, how to start to prepare for the role or to act, or is it a mixture of I don't know, famous Croatian and Italian?
We had in a film a wonderful crew, which consisted really very international. We had Italian production designer Giorgio Barulo, who did magnificent work. You know, we had the Kosovo Albanian actors, we have Croatian actors, we had Slovenian actors, we had really Bosnian actors. We have even sound crew from Serbia. So it was really you know, global like local effort in a film. And actors were really amazing for me. My experience working with them was really marvelous. And the biggest challenge they had was language, you know, because they had to speak on Latin and constructed Illyrian, okay? So it was considering Illyrian language, we worked closely with one of the most prominent Croatian linguists, Professor Matasovic, who like constructed the Illyrian language from scientific standpoint, you know. So this is not, he warned me to especially emphasize that it is not reconstruction of a language, it is construction, one proposal, scientific proposal, how this language could work. And we really try to respect all of his, all he did for the film. So actors basically learned by heart all the sentences in the film, and they did it pretty well. And considering the Latin language, we also had advisors, you know, Latinist people who are teaching on a university Latin language, etc. And what I like is that they used very rough, not school Latin, you know, very rough kind of a Latin language. And that I especially like that every actor had in a film someone who can recognize this, can tell different accents because, you know, it wasn't standardized language in those times. So this is all things which are incorporated in a movie, but in a pretty I don't know, funny, interesting way. Yeah.
It's certainly one of the very fascinating aspects of your film, the historical world building. And
because I mean, if I can just add a little, you know, because my one of the greatest wishes to have, time machine, so I really wanted the audience to be put in something similar, because in a director's approach or director concept was that, for instance, we don't have music like a score in a film at all. It was concept from the beginning of a film, except when they're singing or they're making their own music, etc. Because, if we were transported in time, with no mobile phones, etc., what you hear in the nature, sounds of nature and everything. And other reason is that we didn't use so much, although we had, lighting equipment, reflectors and everything, we really didn't use it in a day scene at all, because we really wanted to have the rough documentary-like image, and we didn't want to use drones, for instance, for running around, because we are not birds, so although we could, drones are not very expensive when you make a film, so, but no, I really decided to try to put the audience in a situation as they were there, so everybody who went in a mountain or trekking could recognize this, no technology, how entity works in a nature. Nature is beautiful, but it is not very friendly, so when you have to go to one hill to another, it takes time, so all film is really, it's not, of course, some action, slow motion, swordsmanship, stuff like that is really slow and slow paced, because that's kind of a part of a concept of a film, so for somebody it is boring, I know, but it was really interesting to imagine, this archaic world in all its glory. Yeah.
Very interesting. And you already said what you did, because you often have this challenge, how to put this historical theme into a concept that the audience is also able to understand. Maybe one question would be interesting. How was it with your country, with the local authorities? Was it understanding from the beginning? Yes, you should do that, or
no? No. Consider we had, of course, we had the support from a film fund, Croatian Film Fund. They were really cool, they supported the film as a filmmakers, because it's interesting, in Croatian cinematography there is not a lot of historical subjects, because, period piece is always expensive. If you are making a film from, I don't know, 70s of last century, it's period piece, so it's expensive. So it's kind of a normal that when you come to the producers, oh, let's make a historical film, they say, no, go out of the room. It was very hard to pull the budget. So considering film community, we were supported quite okay. I don't have complaints about that. But otherwise, it was pretty hard to convince people that, historical subject, especially about Illyrians, has some importance. As I see it, there are a lot of wonderful historical films, and smaller cultures are being exposed, to a lot of topics which are beautiful. I adore historical films. I watch everything, from Hollywood to, I don't know, I watch everything. I really love it. But, considering Illyrians or antique period of Balkan, Croatia, whatever, of the area, I hope that we can make some little contribution, to put little piece of a puzzle in popular culture, because we, as probably we know a lot of, Nordic mythology, of Vikings, of Celts, of German tribes, Teutoburg forest, we know. But what about this little you know, like other areas which are also covered with layers of history. And I thought it would be really fun and interesting to, you know, expose little bits. And I hope that somebody else in the future will make another film about Illyrian tribes, you know. It would be great. I would like to watch it, you know. So this was like, but yeah, it was hard to pull that off. All the project, it take a lot of time and effort. But anyway, we did it. So I'm quite happy.
It's brilliant to talk with you because we can feel your enthusiasm about history.
Yeah.
And this is why this makes it so interesting to see such films and to have.
Yeah, I know, because, you know, speaking about how to film history subject, any kind, it's very interesting question. It's not an easy one to answer when you are making the film, you know, because, you know, you, of course, if you're Hollywood, they have Hollywood frame of mind, you know what to do, you know. So, but you know, as a culture, you know, historically, first image we know from history are about when film emerged and photography, you know, black and white and everything. So it's really something to think about how to film the history subject, you know. From my point of view, if we overload it with so much technical brilliance, it can be interesting, but is it the proper way? You know, when I remember, you know, Nanook first documentaries about ethnographics documentaries, you know, the texture of an image, and it's a black and white, it's not very perfect. So it's kind of a poetry, some crazy feeling which we can feel in those movies, you know. So I don't know. I'm currently trying to write something else about, you know, like Mesolithic period one. Yeah, and it's very hard, you know. It's very hard even to try to write the script and how to film all this. It's really interesting for me. I don't know how to solve those problems, but you know, I very often think about, you know, how to visualize history in a film. Yeah, it's something to think about. Yeah, especially, you know, actors, especially how they move in the costumes, you know, a lot of stuff. Yeah.
May we ask if you would have to define yourself about the movie, in which genre this movie is? Could you tell us what your influences maybe are, or where would you see this film? Is there any expression you could define yourself?
Well, it's a tough question, you know. I really don't know. I don't think so much from that point of view. You know, I see myself as an artist, filmmaker, and that's all. You know, nothing very special about that. But influences, if you, I perhaps think that it's kind of a generation thing. You know, because films which really influenced me as a person or artist, whatever, was, you know, cinematography of, you know, Louis Buñuel, Pasolini, Fellini, you know, old Hollywood. I think about, you know, 70s Hollywood, you know, B movies, Kubrick, Ridley Scott, Kurosawa, you know, etc., you know, French New Wave, stuff like that, you know. So I watched all those films in my formative years, you know. So this kind of feeling left, I suppose, you know. Although I watch as much as I can, you know, new cinematography, everything, you know. Now Ridley Scott prepares Napoleon, you know. I'm very curious to see the film, and so it's kind of a mixture. If we speak about cinematography, especially, you know, people from authors which come from experimental film context, like Cherkassky, for instance, Peter Cherkassky, Austrian, very famous experimental filmmaker and stuff like that, you know. So it's kind of okay, but I think I put some context in my cinematographical taste, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, it is a tough question.
It is a tough question, yeah.
It's always interesting to find out a little bit more about what is your background and why you decide to have this fabulous idea to make a film about this area in this time frame. And so that was the question why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you know, one thing is when you start, because I really, you know, I'm like a history buff, really. When I say history, it's huge topic, of course, but what I really like is, I'm interested in is antique period, you know, and Neolithic time, and of course Mesolithic European, you know, our local European period. So I watch all I can on YouTube, you know, like lectures, Cambridge archaeology, you know, blah, blah, blah. Everything I can find, I really am into that a lot as a fun, you know, as somebody who is really fascinating and interesting in the subject, although I'm amateur, you know, so I just like it. So I dig about that. So it's very interesting, especially in last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, you know, when a lot of things happened in you know, archaeogenetics and all of that. So it's really what I especially like is that more and more like theories or conclusions or facts are, you know, mining they're working a little bit against national myths or you know, some stereotypes about race, about the identity. It's much more complicated, it's much more fun, much more interesting than I suppose those to be. So it's very, for me, it's really something which I think about a lot every day. You know, it's fun and interesting.
So you already had your sources whom to contact to get information about this historical time frame.
Yes, I had to, you know, because as I mentioned before, you know, when you're a visual artist, when you can really create what you want, and literally, because a lot, as I'm basically classical, I'm painter. I studied painting on the classical academy, so when computers emerged long time ago, you know, I switched to 3D animation, and I worked before quite a lot of video effects for films, 3D compositing, animation, and all this stuff, you know. And the thing is, especially now, you can produce almost anything, you know. Now we have computers which are at homes, which are more than, you know, Spielberg had when he made Star Wars, you know. He really had. So we are limited only by our imagination, you know. And with historical films, it's a little bit different if you try to follow scientific facts, you know, as what we know until today. So it's like a corrective, you know, they make you not invent so much, you have to respect that. And in this way, for me, it's much more interesting, you know, because I cannot do whatever I want. And this is some situation which is very inspirative for me, you know. As I make illustrations and I can draw, I made some reconstructional archaeological illustration for exhibitions about Illyrian tribes here in Zagreb's museum. I did some for Neanderthal project, so it's really fun for me and interesting to have some archaeologists who will say, no, this, do that, and then it's kind of inspirational for me. Yeah, especially when you make a film about history. I think that historical advisors are most important people.
Thank you very much. This was very interesting information because we could already hear at the beginning that you had your sources somehow, but now it's for me it's much better now to understand how you tried to put it.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Thank you. Maybe a quick chat about the cast. One example. Was it hard for them to use weapons or clothes from that age to work with?
Yeah, well, yes, because yes, my answer is yes. It was very hard for them because as we try to respect the period 37 BC, okay, of course we could rent Roman equipment from Italy. We can rent because the guys have it, you know. But we decided to really respect helmet models and everything as much as we could, and we even manufactured a lot of things ourselves. You know, for instance, those knives, which which Illyrians use in the film. These are replica from Zagreb's archaeological museums of swords, big knives called sika, which they actually used in those times, you know. So we really we made real replicas of this, and we used it in a film. And all you know, Lorica and everything was no plastics, real materials, real. And this is quite heavy. And one of the actors really put down some weight on at the end of the shooting, you know. This guy who is like a rookie Roman legionary, you know. It was like a little bit plump when we started shooting. At the end, he really, like, you know, it was really heavy for them because those equipment, when you have a shield which is combat ready shield, with the lorica, with, you know, pilum, with everything in it, you really, it's really tough. It's really tough, and all actors were really wonderful because they were like legion, you know. And Illyrians, everybody, no problem, we'll do it. But it was really hard because we really used original real wood, you know, metal in everything. And I think that it's visible on them because they are exhausted a lot of time, which is I mean, it's natural, you know. It's very heavy equipment. So
despite those physical challenges, was it easy then still to work with them under those circumstances? Did they?
Yeah, let me answer to your question in a similar fashion as I answered you before. You know, when you are making animation, you know, you are acting as an animator because I'm moving a character like this, like that. So basically, I'm constantly in a process of thinking about expression of an actor, you know. But in this approach, considering myself, because, you know, every director has his own or her own concept of working with actors, you know. Somebody is like somebody, I don't know, you know. But I really gave them complete trust, you know, 100% trust, and they little by little they started to trust me, you know. So I really wanted for them to express their characters as they're imagined to be expressed, you know. I didn't try to put nothing, you know, oh, you have to move your head like this or like this. No, I just let the people to be normal people in crazy circumstances, you know. So working with actors was a really beautiful experience for me, and I love them all because, you know, we all had firstly great fun. It was hard, but it was also fun. And I really, because in a process of making a film, for me, it's the most important decisions are made not on a set when you start to shoot. Most important decisions are made during the casting process, you know. When you know, searching characters, actors for specific characters, you know. And that's very hard to say a formula for this process, you know, because when you write a script, you invent some kind of a character with his characteristics and everything, but this is just, you know, words on a paper. When you meet person in a real life, you know, every character, every person has his own charisma, you know, personality and everything. and it's very often for me, it's like even better than what I wrote in a script, you know. Oh no, there's for a lot of actors, 90%, I was absolutely certain that they're exact casting for some characters, you know, really, and I really put complete trust to them in those moments, and afterwards I haven't regret this decision. It's really, I suppose every director has his own, you know, mechanism of working, which is okay, but for this, because this is film about people, you know, so, but humans, so personal charisma and some kind of you know, it's hard to describe, you know, it's like intuition, you know, like with friends or with love, you know, you can't, it's hard to explain, but when you meet the guy on an audition, you feel that it is quite a perfect person for the film. So my process was, let's say, like this, you know. As I mentioned before, the concept of a film was from the beginning of complete project is not to have score in the film at all. But of course, we have one scene when the Roman legionary, they sing one song, okay? And Illyrians at the end of the film also they're singing, you know, like, whoa, okay? And we, of course, we have a score on closing credits. Okay, that's, I mean, that's okay, because there are letters going on, so text, so we can sing something. And I was very lucky to get in a contact with one ethnomusicologist from Split, who is really into archaic music, you know, he was absolutely brilliant because he constructed the score and the music and the tonality of the music according to history information. As much as we don't have many information, but something which we have, he used to make sound lines for songs, Roman songs in this film, and a closing score. But if we are talking about type of singing which Illyrians do in a film, that's very actually existing archaic type of singing, which is attributed to, you know, let me say words in English, to the nomadic mountain people in the Balkan area, you know. And so even today, if you go from the coast of Croatia inland, you know, or on some fair or some, you know, happening second flea market or whatever, you will see people still sing in that manner, you know. It's a very short, kind of very archaic, and I think it's called oikanje, or ganga, oh, you know, stuff like that. And it's very, you know, you sing as much as you have breath, you know. It's very short and very powerful because you have to shout to other hill, you know. So it's very ethnologically is logical to have this kind of singing, and we use that actually for Illyrian singing, and it's very like a characteristical for the, not just to Croatia, but you know, broader Balkan region. A lot of people are just shouting, but actually it's it's a singing, you know. So we use that considering a musical score. Yeah, that was, and using of instruments and everything was, you know, constructed from this standpoint. Yeah. So if you ever come to Croatia as a tourist or anything, if you say people are shouting, you know, don't be afraid, they're singing. Yeah. And for instance, just, I know it's not answer to your question, it's just a little bit extra, you know. For instance, we used these tattoos, you know. Because historically, you know, Thracians and Illyrians were tattooed people, you know, and there are some parts in Bosnia and Albania where people in the villages still use tattooing, but they use ornament and patterns which are pre-Christians, which are, you know, like swastikas, like sun symbols, stuff like that. Those patterns were collected by one archaeologist in 19th century, so we have quite a good record of very, very ancient type of visual patterns in these Balkan areas. So we use them for Illyrians, which are probably I think they're probably pretty exact as we can know at this point. So their patterns on nectars are not invented just aesthetically, they are just translated from historical sources.
Maybe actually it's very interesting because you have these cultures of shouting to each other, which is, as you said, very logical. You have it in different cultures, so it was very good to hear that this is a very traditional source. This is fantastic. Maybe also ask you about this building we can see quite dominantly in the film. Was it where did this idea come from? Maybe is it also probably from historical sources reconstructed or?
You mean on this wooden structure, wooden like little fortress?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the measures, the proportions and measures of it, they're from historical sources. You know, Giorgio Barullo did this with, of course, with through the communication with the Italian archaeologists, etc., etc. They resemble very much on Roman little fortress on a German limes. For instance, there are a lot of reconstructions of these buildings, you know, and in this time, so 37 BC, you know, Romans didn't make, at this time in that area, they didn't make a stone structure yet, because in this time, they didn't occupy the territory, you know. The August Octavian in 35, so 2 years later of Illyricum, you know, he like conquered a lot of Balkan areas, and then they started to make, you know, stone buildings. But in those times, they just used what they have, you know, wood and dirt, wood, and this kind of stuff. So it was quite logical. It was interesting for me, you know, because I also expected, you know, okay, Romans, they have, you know, stone little tower, but the guys say no way, and it looks really, really marvelous because everything is not so flashy, you know, so polished and everything, you know, so it's kind of logical thing.
Yeah, but built it for the film.
Yeah, we built it on a film on a mountain which is near Sarajevo, okay, in Bosnia. And mountain is like 1,600 meter high, and it was really a hard job to make a structure there because you have winds, you know. I don't know, guys, how often you go in the mountains, you know, but there is a you know, weather switch just like this. We have even snow at one afternoon, so it's really crazy. A lot of wind, a lot of, you know, very heavy weather, even in the summer. And it was really quite of a project to build this on this quite remote place. But we did it, you know.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it's so good to hear that you also focus on those small things you normally do not see that often. So that's I think we could talk for hours because it's so interesting.
Yeah.
But we don't want to bother you too much anymore. Maybe are there any other questions from your side?
Yeah, you usually see in Hollywood films, they often, at least they seem to be rather restricted by historical phenomena, and you seem to be more on the side of someone who is inspired by them. So if I, as a new filmmaker, if I was just studying filmmaking or whatever, start producing something for the historical interested public, what would you say? How could I start? Where should I start looking? Start talks with people. You talked a lot about experts who helped you and people right into the stuff, bringing input for your project, because it is so much different than making a modern film in modern times with people acting the same that they would with their usual clothes, driving their cars and going into their normal jobs. Where should you begin starting to diverse your film from making a modern film?
Well, my dear man, this is the toughest questions of all questions. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'll make a right kind of answer. But I will start with saying that making art is, for me, as I see it, primarily ethical question, you know. So what does it mean? Did this mean that if you say somebody is film director, okay, but you know, of course, in painting, you had, I don't know, one Picasso, you know, and the guy who is, you know, renovating your apartment, you know, both of them uses brush and a color, you know, but where is the difference? It's ethical questions not for you, for any filmmaker who is interested in history. Do you want to make a career, you know, or do you want to make something else? Both of the approaches are super for me. I don't know differentiate as bad or good, but there is a difference, you know. If you following the path of trying to be as much accurate historically, then it's much harder, you know, because film production is very like a pragmatic one, you know. They always think, and I would think it also as a producer, to make everything cost less, you know. If I have 100 Roman helmets somewhere in a storage, you know, they're plastic, but I have hundreds of them and they cost very little. Of course, as a producer, I will take them. If director come to me and say, oh, these are not totally accurate for a period, you know, we are making this, I will say, okay, man, are we making this film or not? And he will say, okay, we will. So you will have and this is a problem of Hollywood, not because they don't know things, they know, but they are also very good in calculation because film has to make some profit, you know, so that's cool. But if you choose the other possibility, and maybe there is some space in a middle ground, you know, sometimes you have to make compromises as a filmmaker, of course, you know, because making a film is more like solving problems non-stop, you know, that's like it is, you know. But for me, I really like to see films which respect as much as they can historical facts. This respect of historical facts doesn't make a film better, you know, but it's more like how honorable, you know, it's more fair, it's more okay, because you know, I was, as the audience, I could have one glimpse in a history, you know. And if, you know, all those requirements as historical accuracy of, you know, not just costumography, everything is done proper, then I really respect that, because I learned something, you know. I was able to see something which I haven't seen before. So for me, this is a really beautiful thing, you know. So I don't know if I answer your question, but as I say, no, it's ethical. It's, what's your vision? What's your, like, a soul tend to go there, you know. But making historical films is always and I really appreciate anyone who did it, you know. So it's really great effort. Yeah.
So who did it before?
What do you mean?
Are there film projects you could tell us that it went your way, that went the way of the authentic approach, like the serious Rome or
okay. Well, I can't, of course, say from his history expert standpoint, because I'm not, you know. So, for instance, if I watch some film from, I don't know, Middle Ages, I really can't tell what's proper, what's not, etc., etc. But there are some films which I personally very, very much admire and appreciate. One of them is, for instance, first film of Ridley Scott, The Duelists. I don't know if you know, that's really masterpiece for me as a film, and everything else visually absolutely brilliant. The other film is one, I'm very sorry, I can't remember name of the director, but it is Scandinavian film called Pathfinder from 1980. 6 or 4th, I'm not quite certain. You know, there is a remake, but remake is Hollywood, la action, but the original one is absolutely brilliant. And there is another film which I really like. This is a Russian film, Horda, the Horde. You can find it on internet on some obscure, you know, sites and everything about Tatars. You know, it's absolutely, it's not the Mongol. Its really name is Horda, the Horde, you know. And then, of course, these Italian guys with Il Primo Re, I really liked this film very, very, and I even watched the series. So, you know, these kind of approaches are very interesting for me. There is also a German film about Otzi, the Iceman. Yeah, and it really was really interesting to see. So this is something which I really pay attention to, those kind of projects which try to do something a little bit off stream. I'm certain that on your festivals, I watch all your program, and I'm really sorry I can't be there, but I hope I can, you know, watch something of that.
You will be able to watch all of them online. So you will have time like 3 days before and 3 days after.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, but it's about, yeah, because tomorrow I'm living in where the internet is not so good, so I hope that I will manage to see some. But you know, if we are speaking about cinematography, these kind of projects are something which I really enjoy to see.
Yeah. I maybe have one last question, and then I think we're about done taking in your time.
No problem, so, it's a pleasure.
With all these experiences you made on this amazing and huge project, if you could go back to the beginning of the project with the knowledge you have now, what would be some of the regrets in the production maybe you have that you would fix, and what would be the approaches you would do differently when you were able to do it all again? Or let's say if some producer came with a lot of money to you and said, hey, let's do this film all over again, what would you do differently?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Okay. Illyricum is of course, it's not big budget film, you know, for Croatian circumstances, it's quite okay, but you know, it's really, we could say it's a low budget film. And quite sometimes people ask me what you asked, and it's logical to think. Believe it or not, the film would be completely the same. You know, I wouldn't use a drone again. You know, I wouldn't do, you know, because you know you can add hundreds of little legionaries digitally now, and we could do this for a film. You know, but it's something which is I didn't see this period, this particular script as an action-packed film. So if I could have double money, that what you just asked, some producer came and said, okay, you have more money, I would find the way to spend the money, of course. But on what? I would wait different weather situations. You know, because it was, we had sunny days, and it's very expensive to have a big crew on in a mountain, you know. and so on. So I would spend money for waiting for a proper rain, or stuff like that. And you cannot control that. You have just to wait. We are waiting for a rain, and then comes rain 5 days later. Okay, we shoot. I would spend today because I think that this would add to the film's atmosphere a little bit of those, weather, because I spend in the mountains quite a lot of times, and sun periods are there during the summer, but there are much more spectacular weathers, like storms and everything. So I would spend money on this, but otherwise, considering amount of actors, amount of everything, would be pretty the same.
Well, I hope the next project, as you already mentioned, you being interested in the Mesolithic period, that you are going to tackle will also be international collaborations, because you certainly got our interest and passion for this. So hopefully there will be opportunity to collaborate on future projects. It sounds promising.
I would like it very much, because as Illyricum, it will this project, if we can make them, and we will, sooner or later, we will have to have help from other history crazy lunatics as myself. So you can count on that. Don't be sorry later. Okay.
So thank you very much for this very interesting and brilliant interview, and all these details you gave us.
It was everything we could hope for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. It was really my pleasure to speak with you. Yeah.
So all the best for your future projects.
Thank you.
And thanks again.
Have a luck with the festival, and I hope it will be super.
Thank you.
Thank you.